Welcome to Module 12. In this module, we're going to be diving deep into one of the most interesting and the most common themes in psychology, as well as just one of my personal favorites. And this is the idea of purpose. In other words, why are we here? What's the point of it all? So in this course, in this short mini-series that we're going to be doing for however many minutes it takes us, we are going to be looking at this idea of purpose. Why are we here on this planet? What were we put here to do? What will we choose to make our life about? Now, before we go into the nitty-gritty details, let's just go over some basic conceptions and misconceptions when it comes to purpose. Now, firstly, I am under no illusion, and I don't want you to be under any illusion, that when we do this process, because that is exactly what we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at a process for discovering your purpose. We are not going to be in a position where we leave or you log out of this course and you walk out the door and your entire life is different, you're always happy, you've got this massive sense of drive and focus, and it stays like that forever. Of course not. The goal of today's session for you and when you are applying this tool and this idea with your clients is this. We want to walk away from today with a better understanding of the activities and the direction that light us up, that make us excited to get out of bed in the morning. That is the outcome here. And the way we're going to do that is by going through a process where we essentially are going to be looking at 4 key areas. And these 4 key areas, we're going to dive a bit deeper into each of them. And the idea is that we're going to find common themes and activities that overlap between all 4 of these areas. And those activities are going to be the center point of what we call our purpose statement. In other words, what is our main mission here on Earth? Now, that is going to be the outcome. But let's also just clarify 1 or 2 things, which I think are really important when we have any discussion about purpose. Now, purpose and your life's meaning can sometimes be very dramatized and romanticized, right? It's kind of woo-woo and it's kind of this big idea like, this is my life's purpose and I have to colonize Mars or end world hunger. It doesn't need to be that dramatic. Ultimately, my goal with you here is to just make this practical. To find out what are the activities, what are these big ideas and activities that we can focus on in our life that just fill us up, that just are meaningful to us and make us feel like we have purpose. And make us feel, and this is the important part, like we are living purposefully. And that is very different, right? That is a verb. When you live purposefully, when you live productively in the true sense of the word, it means you get up in the morning, you're pumped to do whatever it is you're doing, and at the end of the day, you're like, damn, yes, that was a great day. I achieved some shit today, and I feel good about the shit that I achieved. That is where we want to be. The other point here is that discovering your purpose, going through this activity at all, it's not only for people who are completely lost. Now, I've personally done this with people who are in that position, who are feeling like they are completely lost, they have no idea what they want to do with their lives, they feel like they haven't achieved anything, they feel like life is just passing them by and they're living the same day over and over with no real juice. You know that feeling? You know, like when you're not, like you're living, you're alive, you're breathing and your heart's going, but you don't really feel that juice, right? You kind of wake up in the morning and you're like, another day, right? I've done it with people like that and they have seen huge benefits. But don't forget how powerful this tool is for any human being. And what I mean by that is, let's consider someone who has what we would call material success, or even just someone who seems successful. They seem to have achieved the things they want to achieve. And we look at them and we're like, damn, like they've achieved a lot. They should be, quote unquote, super stoked and super happy with their life. Now, people like that are still in need of, even if not finding a new purpose, consistently double checking whether they are still moving in a meaningful direction. Because it's completely possible that you wake up in the morning, you have $1 billion in the bank, you have no worries at all, beautiful family, beautiful career, whatever. but it just doesn't light you up anymore. That path is no longer doing it for you. It's not exciting you anymore. And for those people, this works exactly the same way. Because purpose is not something that's fixed. It's not something that you discover and then that is it forever. It can change, just like our personalities change over time. I can tell you now, my purpose 10 years ago was very different to what my purpose is today. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail later. But ultimately, understanding our purpose and making sure that we are waking up every day and doing shit that matters is a consistent process. It's consistently checking the pulse just to check in and be like, you know what, am I making the best of my life? Because if we don't have a plan for our life, how can we have a plan for our day, right? Like ultimately, if you think about it just very practically, if I have no idea like what the end goal is and what the bigger purpose is, then how do I know what to do productively with the next 24 hours? It's kind of like saying, well, I need to wake up this morning and run. Cool, you can run as fast as you want, but if you don't know the direction you're meant to be running in, you're going to get to the end of the run and maybe you'll feel satisfied by the progress you've made, or maybe you'll have sprinted the entire day, be completely dead and tired, and have not really achieved anything of meaning. And that is why this is so important. So I hope that clears up a few misconceptions, and I hope it clarifies at least what my purpose is for this course and for this section, is to get you to understand and discover for yourself what those activities are that are meaningful to you, that are going to make that when you wake up in the morning, you're pumped to do your day. So let's jump straight into this, and let's kick it off with the overall idea of what we're talking about, this idea of purpose. And this idea of purpose is actually from the Japanese culture rather. So if we have a look at the screen here, the word ikigai, it literally translates to a reason for being. Now, I love this, right? And this entire course is based on this concept of ikigai. And there's many ways, there's many different frameworks and ideas of how to find your purpose. I'm most certainly not saying this is the only way. I'm just saying that this has been extremely helpful for me. It's been extremely helpful for the people I've worked with. And for me, it kind of just hit home. Purely initially, and this is how it caught my attention, because of the definition of ikigai, a reason for being. Like, how cool does that sound? Like, doesn't that just make sense? Like, a reason for being here. And that is why it hit home for me so hard. So, ikigai is a system for finding our unique purpose by discovering activities that intersect at 4 main points. These points are what we love, so the things that we're passionate about, the things that make us lose track of time, so the things we really just love. Number 2, what we are good at. These are our strengths, the things we are naturally good at or have the potential to be good at. What the world needs, which is our mission, right? The change we want to see in the world, the causes that we feel passionate about, that we really want to see change in the world. And as we'll see later, it doesn't need to be the entire world, right? But it needs to make some kind of impact. And 4th, what can we be paid for? In other words, our vocation, something that is sustainable. So this is the activities that are going to sustain our life. Now, that's different for everyone, which we'll get into later. But ultimately, these are the 4 things we want to discover today. What are the things we love? What are the things we're good at? What are the things that we want to change in the world? And what can we be paid for? Or how can we make it sustainable? So what we're going to do is look at these 4 different areas and the activities that fall within them. And then what we're going to do is have a look at, great, now that we've got awareness of these 4 main points, what are the common themes here? Can we see overlaps or recurring themes where we can take these 4 things together, kind of like throwing ingredients into a pot? And how can we cook something up that's really unique for us? That we take a big bite or a sip and we're like, that is my flavor, right? And that is going to be our ikigai statement, our purpose. Once again, we pursue that we learn, we go out and we test it, we get feedback from the environment and from our own experience, and if we want to change it, we change it. It's not like we have this purpose and now we're stuck to it, and in 2 weeks' time you're like, this is actually quite shit, I don't want to do this anymore. Then you change it. So, with that being said, sit up in your chair, chest up, shoulders back, take a nice deep breath in, and let's jump straight into it. So, if you look at the screen for a moment, this is just a visual representation of your Ikigai. So we have what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what we're good at. And at the intersection of all of these things is our Ikigai, right? These are the components, the ingredients that go into this big boiling pot that we call our purpose. All right, so let's have a quick look at the benefits of Ikigai, because this is really, for me personally, when I first started reading about this, I read about the benefits. I like looking at the theoretical and the technical side before I apply it, and this really blew me away. And as we go through this, you'll kind of think of it from a statistic point of view, but also just think about it logically. Think about the benefits of just waking up in the morning, being excited to do your day, doing something you love, and then at the end of the day, thinking that was a great day. Think about it practically, and then you'll see how these benefits align. So firstly, higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction. Now that's an overall general point, but come on. Of course, right? If you're pumped to get out of bed in the morning, of course you're going to be happier. It's obvious. Number 2 is higher performance. Access to what we call the flow state. Now, this is what attracted me the most, because when we have that clear sense of purpose, right? The big picture purpose, it just lets us perform at a higher level. We simply just unlock more of our ability. And if you think of it from a psychological and physiological level, when our brain, when this organ is very clear on what that end goal is, right? Is super clear on our big purpose and the reason we're here, and it has confidence in that purpose, it is going to dedicate all of its resources to do that. It's going to dedicate all of its energy, all of its focus, and it's just going to be more effective at overcoming barriers because it is so dead set on making it to that purpose. And this is where we tap into that beautiful flow state. Now, the flow state is when you're doing an activity. Well, let me ask you like this. Have you ever done an activity and you were just so in the zone with it that you completely lost track of time, right? You picked up your phone or looked at your watch and you were like, where did the time go? But compare that to doing something you hate. How slowly does time go, right? How slowly does time go when you're waiting in a queue or listening to a boring presentation or sitting at a job that you freaking hate? The clock almost feels like it's going in slow motion. But do something you love, do something with purpose, it feels like time just disappears. So that is what the flow state is all about. And in that flow state, you are going to be your most effective. You're going to show up at your fullest potential. Now, as I'm sure you might be able to tell, speaking and teaching, that's my jam, yo. That's my purpose, that's my Ikigai. And I'll give you an example of my statement later, my Ikigai statement. But when I'm teaching, damn, I can talk for hours, right? So we'll see how long this video takes. That's why at the beginning I said, hey, might take 20 minutes, might take 2 hours. Who knows? Live with a bit of variety, yeah? So, number 3, reduced levels of stress and anxiety. Now, having a pure and a clear purpose really helps us manage stress and anxiety better. And the reason is kind of tied into step number 4, if we just look at the screen here again, which is increased resilience. So let's just look at those for a moment, right? When we have purpose, we simply have a higher level of resilience, meaning when we're faced with a setback, we are able to push through it and continue going. Why? Because the purpose is motivating. It's more motivating to push through the obstacle than it is to chill, to step back and say, you know what, I tried, I'm not going to do it again. I am motivated to not want to go through the pain. When we have a purpose, on the other hand, we push through those barriers. And that is what resilience is. It is bouncing back from setbacks. And it is from this resilience, from this internal grit that purpose gives us, that we are able to have less stress and anxiety. And there's many mechanisms for it, but we're not going to go into too much detail. Then we'll really be here for 3 hours. But at the end of the day, when we have determination and grit and resilience, we still experience stress and anxiety, but we're able to overcome them because we know that achieving and living our purpose is much more important than letting these internal barriers overcome us. So again, it doesn't mean that we don't feel stress and anxiety. It just means we have a great enough motivating factor that allows us to push through those emotions and deal with them more effectively. And overall, when we talk about purpose, and I think this is very important to mention, it's not just a statement that we write down. It's not a noun, right? It's not a thing. It's a verb. It's what is my purpose? And the most important question, how can I live purposefully? Think about that word, purposefully. Literally living full of purpose, which doesn't mean having a vision board and looking at it every day and then going out and doing some other shit. It means taking actions that align with our purpose. That is what it means to live purposefully, to take action that aligns with our purpose, to live in a purpose-filled way. That is really the core here. We're looking for action. I don't want you to write your Ikigai statement and put it on a shelf and take pictures and post it on Instagram and then do nothing about it. Screw that. Take it, take action, and do it consistently. You don't need to change the world overnight, but you do need to change yourself overnight. And you can do that by taking action based on your purpose. Got it? Small side tangent, but important. Greater longevity. This is another one of the benefits of Ikigai. So, one of the key factors of the people in these so-called blue zones. If you don't know what blue zones are, they are these areas in the world that they have identified as being extremely healthy, because in these blue zones, we have people that live longer than anyone in the world, pretty much. So you have these blue zones, and they have a very high amount of centurions. Hope I'm saying that correctly. But essentially, people that live over 100. There's a really cool Netflix documentary on it if you want to check it out. But the point is, when they looked at the comparisons of these blue zones, so they try to figure out, right, like, what are these people doing differently? And what are the common themes amongst these blue zones that are contributing to their longevity? Now, of course, there was a lot of themes. There was things like diet and exercise, etc., etc. But one of the biggest components was purpose. One of the biggest components was waking up in the morning and having something meaningful to do. Now, this sense of purpose is literally, and this is one of the most mind-blowing things, so listen to this. Having that purpose not only made people live longer, it also improved their overall physical well-being. People with purpose were less likely to smoke, they were less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, and this is the one that like blew it out of the park for me, there are studies that find a positive correlation between purpose, so someone having purpose, and an absence of cardiovascular disease. Now bear in mind, cardiovascular disease, right, disease of the heart, is the #1 killer of human beings on the planet. And what this is saying is that people with purpose, people who live with purpose, who wake up in the morning and they're like, yes, let's go do shit that matters, they usually have lower instances of heart disease. So it is literally physically connected to us. Now, of course, there might be many ways that that's happening, because as we saw, people with purpose are less likely to drink and smoke, etc., etc. But overall, having a purpose is just better for our physical and our mental well-being, right? Because we're put here to have purpose. We're not put here to simply lounge around and enjoy life, right? Obviously, we want to do that, and that's great, and we must do that. But we have to be driven by purpose. More on that in a moment. And overall, improved social connections. And a lot of this is around building a community that is centered around that purpose, right? So for example, people who are connected in fitness, people who are connected in ending homelessness, ending world hunger, even people who are just connected in the sense that they have a strong identity of being connected to their family. Their purpose is to grow their family and nurture their family, and people create communities around that purpose. So, these are some of the benefits of Ikigai. I mean, we could go on forever simply talking about this, but I hope you can see by now how powerful it is to have at least an idea of what your purpose might be, or to help your clients discover the same, and then to take small, consistent actions to live more purposely, to have habits that are more centered around our true purpose. So, the greatest perception shift that we need to make in order for all of this to work is purpose over pleasure. Purpose over pleasure. When a person lacks purpose, they numb themselves with pleasure. That was a statement by Viktor Frankl. He wrote an incredible book called Man's Search for Meaning. I highly recommend that you read it. It's not a long read, but it's absolutely incredible. It's all about his story and how he found purpose, literally living in the Nazi imprisonment camps. Without going into too much detail, it is an amazing book. Definitely have a read of it. Now, the whole idea here is that when we don't have purpose, we numb ourselves with pleasure. And we can see this all around us, right? People will drown themselves in social media or alcohol or drugs because they just don't feel like they have a purposeful life, right? They don't feel like they're doing anything meaningful. They don't have that sense of purpose, so they drown it out with pleasure. Now, those are big examples, but we can do the exact same thing. It's not only about abusing drugs or alcohol, it can even just be a day-to-day thing. We finish work, we want to get working on that project or that side business or that hobby that we know lights us up. But it's just so much easier, right, to just pick up the phone and scroll or to watch another episode of Netflix. And we use pleasure to distract ourselves from purpose, because purpose is more fulfilling, but it's harder and it requires delayed gratification. Now, one thing I just want to be very clear on is that I'm not at all advocating for completely disregarding pleasure and just only being focused on your purpose, right? Life is about balance. Of course, you can watch some Netflix, you can scroll and watch some cat videos on Instagram, right? Everyone's got their own balance, but we're not saying that you get rid of pleasure. The idea here is that we don't make pleasure the main goal. And that is how so many of us live, if not all the time, at stages of our life. We live for pleasure. We live for the weekend. We live for that drink. We live for that smoke. We live for that experience. And those experiences and those things aren't the problem. It's when those things become the main reason that we're here. And we're always seeking pleasure. Pleasure is fleeting, which means it comes and then it goes. And that's okay. But purpose endures. So ultimately what we want is a life guided by purpose, guided by things that are meaningful. And take pleasure as rewards. Enjoy. Enjoy pleasure. Enjoy the small things, of course, right? We're here to enjoy as well. But our main reason for being here is to find our purpose and to run with it. Pleasure is not the goal of life. Rather, lasting pleasure is a byproduct of finding and pursuing one's purpose. So what I want you to do now before we move on, and you can pause this video if you want, write this down please on your paper. Don't just think of it, write it down. What are you currently using to distract you from your true purpose? I know you know what it is. It's the thing you do when you should be doing that other thing that lights you up and you know is going to be more meaningful to you. So what is that thing? Is it just focusing on work, right? Is it scrolling on social media? Is it going out and partying? Is it playing video games or doing some other hobby that you enjoy, but it's not aligned with your purpose? And here's the tricky part. Whatever this distraction is, it's not always a bad thing. For example, are you avoiding working on that thing you're passionate about because you're giving all your time and attention to your kids? Now, am I going to tell you to completely disregard your kids and go after your passion? Of course not, right? Because you love them, life is about balance. But could you not take 10 minutes a day and work on your purpose as well as giving your kids the attention they need? And I share that example because it's not always quote unquote bad things that we distract ourselves with. Sometimes it's noble things, it's good things, but we still use them as a distraction. So now that we have the overview and the understanding of purpose and ikigai, let's now go through the activity where we go deeper into those 4 elements to start finding the recurring themes. Sit up nice and tall, roll those shoulders, take a deep breath in, and let's get straight to it, shall we? So, number 1, what are you good at? What are your core strengths? Element number 1 of ikigai. Now guys, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write down the answers to all of these questions as we go. Pause the video if you need to, perfectly cool. Let's just make sure we actually get these down. So, number 1, what do you believe you are good at? What do you think you're good at? Are you good with computers? Are you good with speaking to people? Are you good with explaining things? Are you good with setting up events? Are you good at cooking? Are you good at gardening? Are you good at training? What are you good at? And if you sit there and you're like, I'm not good at anything, bullshit. Of course you're good at something, right? Everyone is good at something. And you don't need to be world class. It just needs to be something you have a good amount of proficiency in. And you can and have the potential to get world class at this thing. So what are you good at? And by the way, guys, a lot of these questions in each of these sections, they're similar to one another, but it's kind of like we're just looking for the same thing. In this case, it's strengths, but we're looking for it through different questions. So it's kind of like looking at it from different angles. So we stimulate our brain to come up with new ideas and new answers. So number 2, which accomplishments are you proud of and why? So what are you proud of? Are you proud of acquiring a certain level of education? Maybe you had a certain experience that you're proud of going through. Maybe it's just a skill that you developed by yourself. I was coaching a lady the other day, and she is pretty much completely fluent in Korean. She's written books in Korean, and she even teaches people how to speak Korean. And without giving away her identity, she's not Korean. Not at all, nowhere close. So it's just a strength of hers that she developed kind of randomly. She kind of had a hobby, and she got interested in it, and then she was like, man, I'm actually quite good at this. And long story, she went on, she built a business from it. Amazing story. But these are the kind of things we're looking for, right? So like, what are you good at? And don't think of any other elements. Just think of, are you good at this? Do you have a standard amount of proficiency? Don't worry about money and time and all of that right now. Just focus on these questions. Which tasks or activities do others come to you for assistance with? So, especially at family functions or gatherings, right? Someone will always come to you and ask for your help with something. What is that thing? Your family, your friends, your colleagues, they always come to you and ask you for it. When I was in college and I was studying, I used to make the best summaries and the best notes. And what would you know? People came to me and they said, hey, can I get a copy of that? Are you willing to sell that to me? Now, I never ended up actually selling it, so I just gave it out for free. But that was the point. I didn't see that skill as anything important or even relevant. I was just like, this is what I do, and it works for me. And other people were like, oh, well, you're quite good at that. Can we have some of that too? And as you see now, I am here, I am teaching, I am coaching, and that skill of making summaries, breaking down complex things and making them simple, that was one of the strengths I used that worked into my purpose. So, number 4, what are 3 adjectives people would use to describe you at your best? Right? Is it focused, organized, creative, spontaneous, fun, exciting, connective? I don't know if that's a word, but that feeling of being able to make a good vibe and connect with people. So what are 3 adjectives that people would use to describe you at your best? And last but not least, what are 3 activities that most people find challenging that you find to be easy, right? For example, I am not so great with computers. I have a general amount of proficiency, but not so much. And the things that I find really challenging, my brother-in-law, he'll do it in 2 seconds, right? It's literally like it's nothing to him. But for me, it would take me like 30 minutes just to have a basic understanding. So what are those activities for you that other people seem to find really challenging, but you kind of breeze through it? So Now that you have these 5 questions down, you should already start to be seeing some themes. But what I'd like you to do as an additional action step that you're going to go out and do in this week, yes, the next 7 days after you are watching this video, you're going to ask 3 different people from 3 different areas of your life what they believe 3 of your biggest strengths are. So for example, 3 people from work, 3 people from family, 3 people from friends. And each of those 3 people from each of the 3 categories, you're going to ask them, hey, could you just tell me or write down or WhatsApp me or email me, what are 3 things you think I'm good at? Now, I know this can be kind of an awkward thing to ask for, but hey, we only live once, why not give it a try? Worst thing they can give you is something to work on, I guess. So, ask them, and what you're going to have is you're going to have 27 strengths between these 3 people. Now, I didn't double check this before I did this. I'm pretty sure 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. But anyways, we have 27 strengths. Remove the duplicates and make a list. Compare that to the list of strengths you wrote down with those previous 5 questions, and voila, you have a massive amount of strengths from your perspective and others' perspectives, and then condense that list again so you have a nice solid list of your core strengths. Beautiful. So team, that is element number 1. Now once again, we're going through this at a rapid rate. We do it intensely so we can get to the core of things. But over time, this might develop, you might find other strengths, and that's perfectly fine. But I want you to do this, and I want you to have at least 3 strengths written down. 3 ones that are clearly a common theme, that are clearly something that is unique to you. Got it? Beautiful. So, now that we've done number 1, element number 1, and I want you to have those 3 strengths written down, at least 3 strengths written down under strengths. Now, let's look at element number 2. What do you love? What are your passions? Now remember, when we go through these, don't think about, oh, well, I love this, but I suck at it. Or I love this, but how could I possibly do this every day or make a living from it? Don't worry about those questions. All I want you to focus on is these next few questions and what you love. That's it, right? Imagine like you're a little kid on Christmas. You can do whatever you want, right? Imagine that money is not a factor, time is not a factor. It's a perfect world, and you can do exactly what you love, regardless of whether you're good at it or whether it brings you money. So, number 1, which activities make you lose track of time? Once again, you know those activities where you can just do them and time just disappears. I used to be a DJ, and when I used to plan my sets, right, where I used to take all the different songs and put them together and find out which song to put in which order and what transition to do in which way, blah, blah, blah. I could do that 4-5 hours straight. No rest, no interruption, complete focus. But let me try and learn legal history, which is what I was doing at that time in college, and I could concentrate for approximately 10 minutes before getting distracted by something. And it's a clear indication of what our passions are. So which activities make you lose track of time? That you could just do them forever, hours. And I want you to think of activities that are engaging, right? Yes, we can all lose track of time scrolling on social media or watching Netflix, but I'm talking about positive activities, right? Not that those things aren't positive, but things that are proactive, that you are actively engaged in the process. That's what I'm talking about here. Number 2, which activities would you do if money or other responsibilities, work, kids, family, etc., weren't a factor at all? Which would those activities be? Remember, pause this video if you need to. What topics do you love to talk about and discuss? You know those topics that may or may not be related to your profession, but just those things that you love talking about, that you could just chat about them forever and pretty much just never stop, right? Because you love the topic so much. Maybe it's food or gardening or music or astrology or anything. What are those topics that you love? Which hobbies or activities bring you joy? I love this question because it's just so simple, right? Like, what brings you joy? What do you do that puts a smile on your face? Yeah? And number 5, what gives you a sense of excitement? What are those things that light you up, right? That excite you, that get you pumped, yeah? Where you can't sleep the night before because you're just so excited to wake up in the morning. What are those activities? So, now that you've got those down, and remember, all of these questions, we're looking for the same thing. We're looking for a list of what you love. These questions are just looking at it from different angles. So when you do this, and when you do this with a client or someone that you serve, you don't need to use all these questions. You're simply using these in order to get to this main point. And as a quick side note, and I'm not sure if I said this at the beginning, so I'll repeat it now just in case. Remember that your purpose can be found in any situation or setting, right? This can even be used if you're a manager or if you work in a corporate space or a team or a business, to find your purpose within that business or within that organization or within that team. So as a side note, this practice, this whole process of Ikigai, of purpose finding, can be applied in that setting too. It doesn't only have to be about our overall life in general. So now that we've done element 2, I need you to have a list of at least 3 things that you are passionate about. And this week, in the next 7 days, I want you to add to that list by making a list of 3 things that make you lose track of time. So that's your action step for the next week, right? Remember the strengths one? You've got that one, and now you've got the passion one. But for right now, I need you to have 3 strengths and 3 passions written down. At least, you can have more if you want, but I want you to have 3 of these. Got it? Awesome, because we're halfway through. Beautiful. Now we get to the juicy bits. Number 3, element number 3, what the world needs. In other words, your mission. Now, finding our purpose, and this is where there's a lot of difference of opinion. Finding your purpose, yes, it's about doing things you're good at and things that you love. 100%. But having a mission behind that purpose, in other words, taking things that you're good at and that you love and applying them in a way, and this is the key, that helps the world be better, is one of the most fundamental ingredients of purpose. Because humans, we are designed to grow and give. We are designed to contribute to other living things, period. And when we do something we're good at, that we love, that contributes to other human beings or other living things, that is really the recipe for success. Because then we are ticking all of our human needs. We're doing things we love and that make us lose track of time, and we're helping the planet become better. And that sub-element, that feeling of contribution and contributing to others, that is a huge part of that feeling of purposefulness, of that feeling of fulfillment. Not just doing things we're good at and that we love, but doing it in a way that serves the planet. So do not underestimate the power of this specific element within purpose. So once again, let's go through these question by question. Pause the video, write it down. Yalla, let's go. So, what change would you like to see in the world? Very simple question. What do you think needs to change? What problem do you look at and you're like, that's shit. It shouldn't be like that. It could be so much better, and I wish it was. What is that? And to clarify here, when we're talking about the world, it doesn't need to be as big as something as ending world hunger or colonizing Mars so that we have a safe and sustainable place to live. The world in this context can be as small as within the confines of the 4 walls of your home. What change do you want to see in your family? What change do you want to see in your community, in your town, in your city, in your country, on your continent, wherever? Now, it can be huge, but it can also be smaller in scale. It doesn't matter. That's the beautiful thing, right? We don't need to make huge change in order to feel this way and to have that purpose. So that is the first question, the first avenue that we're trying to look at to get down to this point of your mission, this element of Ikigai. Number 2, which big problems do you feel strongly about? For me personally, and I'll give you, like I've been alluding to, I'll give you my Ikigai statement later once I went through this process. But for me, education was a big thing. I looked at a lot of the challenges that were in the world and I was like, yeah, like I feel strongly about a lot of them. But then I thought, what is the root cause? Like, why are people doing this? And to me, I believe a big challenge is education. And I say they, I'm talking about myself as well, the entire education system as a whole, we are not taught some of the very important things we should be taught in order to be our best selves. So for me, education was a big one here. Number 3, what positive impact would you like to have in the world? So when you die, how do you want the world to be different? I always think of it in terms of net difference, meaning when I leave the world, I just want it to be a little bit better than how it was when I got here, right? Doesn't need to be huge and esoterical, but I just want shit to be a little bit better, right? Even a bit, that'll be cool. How can your skills and experience contribute to others? But more of a practical question here. How can your skills and experience positively help other people? And when I'm saying this here, other people helping the world, I'm referring to animals as well. I'm a huge animal lover. Any living thing, right? It can be animals, it can be the sea, it can be nature, it doesn't matter. But how can your skills and experience contribute to others? Maybe it's a skill that you have, maybe you identified it in the strength section, maybe it's just an experience overall. What experience or skill can you use that will contribute to others? Beautiful stories here if you look at people who, for example, have gone through a traumatic experience or who have overcome a certain addiction. They can take their skills and experience and use it to help others. Of course, that's just one example. It doesn't need to be as extreme as that, but it's just a visceral example of what this step really means. And lastly, one of my favorite questions. If you could wave a magic wand and change something in the world today, what would it be? Magic wand, right? So no strap on resources, on time, on skill, nothing. I can just sit here, wave this magic wand, cure world hunger, end war, whatever it is. This is a big picture question. But what would that thing be? Remember, we're not thinking small here, we're thinking limitlessly. Don't worry, we'll make it practical in a little bit. But for now, what is that big change that you want to see in the world? Write that down. Beautiful. So team, the action step here is identify 3 changes you would like to contribute to the world that would help other living things. I want you to do this within this next week. Identify more points that will fit this element. But for right now, for the purposes of this activity, I want you to write down 3 things, right? With this one, you have a bit of leeway because if you've got that one big mission, right, you can just keep 1. But anywhere from 1 to 3 big changes that you would like to see in the world, I want you to have that written down. Stay with me. We're almost there. We're on the final element. And last but not least, what can you be paid for? In other words, your vocation. Now, before we get into this, and this is really where we make things practical, it says what can you be paid for, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in monetary terms. So what I mean by this is perhaps you're in a situation where money's not a problem, right? Maybe you don't need to make money. Maybe you can just do whatever you want and you don't need to worry about money. If so, you don't have to make money from your purpose. You could also be in a situation where you need to make money and you have a job and you make money through your job and that covers your expenses, etc., etc. And you want to pursue your purpose, but you don't mind keeping your job, right? Which means you can pursue your purpose, pursue this ikigai without needing it to make money. So ultimately, the whole point of this element is what is going to be sustainable, right? Because it's all good and well to do something that you're good at, that you love, and that makes a difference in the world. But if that's not sustainable, right, then it's not really going to help you live purposefully. Because if by living purposefully, you're living brokely with no money or food, that's a problem. So that's what this step is about. So whatever your situation, whatever your circumstance, keep that in mind as we go through this final point. Let's go. Number 1, which professions currently align with your passions? So what are the professions that are currently available that you're aware of or that are within your surroundings that align with the things you like and the things you're good at, right? What are those professions? For example, being a teacher, being an engineer, being a tour guide, whatever that might be. Which professional skills can you develop or improve to make a sustainable income? Back to that example of that girl who was amazing at Korean. She started a business, writing books and tutoring and teaching people how to speak Korean. So she developed that skill and turned it into a business where she could actually charge for that. For myself personally, I was studying law, graduated from law, decided not to go down that path because it wasn't my unique purpose. I was good at it, but I wanted to go another path. And all I knew how to do at the time was build bigger biceps and bigger chest muscles. So I turned that into a skill, which I could then sell for money, and I became a personal trainer. Small example, but that is how we can take these skills, these passions, and monetize them. What products or services are people willing to pay for? Again, it could be a book, it could be an actual physical product, right? That you enjoy, that's surrounded by your passions, what makes a difference in the world. Which specific jobs would cater to your passions? So this might be specific jobs within your organization right now. Maybe you're in a business or an organization that you love and ticks all the boxes, but you're just not in the right role for you. And last but not least, is there a way to pursue your passions without making money from them? Again, this is a question in case you want to do this, but without having to make money from it, right? Because obviously this adds a whole nother element and it completely depends on what you want to do. So as the final action step, I want you to write down 3 ways that you could make your purpose sustainable. That could be by making money through them or by structuring them in a way that you don't need to be paid for them in order to maintain your financial well-being. Okay, so now we're at the stage where you should essentially have your 4 elements with at least 3 points under each. Now, you already should start to see some themes, but now we're going to go through a very easy, very simple 4-step process to put all of these things together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my story with you first so that you can see kind of how this went. Now, here's the important thing to know. You can do all of this without going through this structured process. Many people have. Perhaps you've done it as well. You've automatically moved in the direction of things that you're good at, that are meaningful to you, that you enjoy, and that are sustainable. It's not like you have to go through this course in order to live your life, right? The difference is, I want to give you a system so that we don't hope that that happens or let it happen by accident or leave it for the few people that were blessed enough to be in environments and be surrounded by people that actually push them in all of these directions. My logic is, if it works, make it into a system, teach that system, use that system so that we leave no stone unturned. So we don't hope to land up in a purposeful direction that is meaningful to us, but we have a system to do it. So I share that with you because when I went through this, I didn't use the system. I just, luckily enough, through things I read, through my mindset, through the people I was surrounded by, came to this place of purposeful living by myself, without this guide. But what was beautiful is that when I learned about this and I started applying this with people, I realized that I'd pretty much done the same thing, just without the structure and system, as I'm sure many people have done before. So, I was a lawyer. I was studying to be a lawyer, rather. And I completed my studies, I graduated, but by the end of my degree, I got a bunch of job offers, right? I got great grades, I was exceptionally skilled and good at what I did. And you know what? I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed debating, I enjoyed writing arguments. I loved it, right? So it was a passion, and I was really, really good at it. And it was sustainable, right? Because I got job offers. But here's the thing. That last piece, that mission, the difference I wanted to make in the world, that was the one piece missing from the current professional path that I was on. And it was always this bugging sensation. And it wasn't even that I couldn't make a difference through what I was doing. It just wasn't the difference I personally wanted to make in the world. When I left the planet, I knew I wanted to make a difference in a different way. And to be honest, I didn't know exactly what that was. I didn't have everything figured out. I just had this feeling and knew that it wasn't what I was currently doing. So I decided to not take the job offers that I was given, and I decided instead to become a personal trainer because I loved fitness. I was good at coaching and teaching. I could make a sustainable income from it by being a personal trainer. And it was more aligned with my mission because I knew at some stage, in some way, that I wanted to teach people how to be healthier and stronger. Now, that evolved over time and became more clear to me, but that is the direction I took. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life because I was able to apply myself in a way that was meaningful, to live more purposefully. And I also share that with you to let you know that, of course, that wasn't easy, right? It wasn't the set path, it wasn't the path I'd set out on, and it most certainly was not the secure path. And luckily for me, I was surrounded by brilliant people that supported me in that journey, and it was the best decision I ever made. Now, let's go through these one by one and put together this purpose statement for you, and then I will share mine with you. So, step number 1, reflect and review on all the answers in all 4 sections or elements, and look for recurring themes. So look at those things you've written down, the 3 things in those 4 categories, and ask yourself, is there a theme coming up, right? Are there general ideas that seem to be coming up? Like, is it all related to animals or to tech or to working with people or health or psychology or cooking? Whatever the common theme might be. Don't overthink this. It's just the general common theme. Step number 2, identify overlaps. Find where your passions overlap with the vocations, so the things you like overlap with the things you can be paid for, or where the strengths that you have overlap with your mission, right? With the change you want to see in the world. Step number 3, you combine your elements. Find ways to combine the overlapping elements into a single activity or purpose. And step number 4, create your Ikigai statement. Create a summarized statement that reflects the purpose that is produced by combining the elements. Now, I know we went through that relatively fast. Remember, you can pause and write these down. But here's the ultimate outcome here. Through what you have now learned, I want you to write down a purpose statement. Something that is going to guide you every day. Something, and remember, this isn't just a theoretical thing, right? It's not just a thing you write down and done. I want you to look at that writing, right at that sentence that you've come up with by combining all of the common themes and the overlaps. And when you look at that piece of paper and that writing, I want it to excite you. Because if it doesn't, then something is missing. For me, my Ikigai is to improve the quality of human education through clear and simple communication. Now, let me show you how I got to that point. I love teaching. I love explaining. I love speaking. I love educating people and coaching them on ideas and insights that are going to change their life. I love it. I could do it for hours, clearly. And I love that. I'm good at it, right? Am I the best in the world? Probably not. But I've got a good amount of proficiency at it, right? A combination of public speaking, of working as a lawyer, and I've got feedback that I am a pretty good communicator. Cool. I'm passionate about it, and I love it. I'm passionate about it, and I have a fair amount of skill at it, strength. Number 3, I told you earlier, what I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is the quality of education. We're not getting taught the basic things, for example, about how to take care of our body, how to manage our emotions, how to communicate effectively. These simple insights, these simple teachings that would make all of us just be better. We would tap into more potential, we would be kinder and better to each other, and we just live in a more productive and effective society. I'm very passionate about that. So that was my mission. And number 4 is, well, how can I make this sustainable? How can I make this activity of teaching people the basic elements of how to take care of their body and their mind, how can I use this skill, use this passion, use this mission, and still make it sustainable? So I became a coach. Now I coach people on how to build a better body and brain. I coach people on how to use these insights to take better care of their body and their brain so that they can perform at their best. They can be their healthiest, best self, and they can show up at 100%. And now, clearly, I have the privilege of taking those skills and teaching them to other aspiring coaches so that you can go out and you can use these skills to help other people. And we can now scale that benefit and that positive impact so much more than I could have ever done myself. And that is how I made it sustainable, because now I get paid to coach people, to teach people, for people to take my courses. And that is how I came to this Ikigai statement. So I hope my explanation has helped you come up with yours. And remember, guys, this is not a one and done thing. You may struggle with this. It might take you a few weeks to get this down. But as long as you look at these simple elements, strengths, passions, mission, and vocation, find and discover more about yourself in these 4 areas, and find a way to mesh them all together to create an Ikigai statement, that is going to be the way to get this direction. Either a direction that you've never had before, or a new direction that's actually going to light you up and fulfill you. If you have a look at the slides that come along with this course, there are also some examples, right, other than my own, of going through these 4 steps, right? So we've given you some examples there that you can go through just as a nice, easy reference when you're coming up with your own. So, well done on sticking through this with me, team. I hope this has been helpful. I hope that this has been valuable, not only to apply to yourself, but if you are a coach, if you're working with other people, to take this framework and apply it with them too. And remember, this framework can be applied to anyone. Someone with no direction, someone who wants a new direction, or even within a team, a business, or an organization. Because ultimately, if we are all living purposefully, in a way that we're doing things we love, doing things we're good at, and doing things that make a positive impact in a sustainable way, the entire planet will just be better, right? Everyone will be happier, a lot more good will be done, and overall, it'll just be a better place to live. So thank you so much. I hope this has been valuable for you. If you need anything at all, drop us a message, and we will be more than happy to assist you.